So recently, we saw the latest Millie Bobby Brown Netflix team-up make its debut with the release of Damsel. And I'll be real with you, when I first heard about the existence of this movie, I didn't think much of the concept. I enjoyed the previous Millie Bobby Brown stuff on Netflix, Stranger Things, Enola Holmes 1 and 2, classics. And of course, mega popular and successful. I don't think anyone can deny that, but I don't know, this concept sounded pretty bad. But like I said, all I knew she was in it, and she fights a dragon. Then I watched the trailer, my goodness, my mind did start to change just a little. For starters, the film has a cast that is far better than it deserves on paper. It's a nothing princess action flick, and yet, here we are, with an all-star cast that wouldn't feel out of place in an Oscar contender. Ray Winston, Angela Bassett, Robin Wright, an all-star cast. What's going on? What's the budget on this thing? My God, too much. And that's not even taking into account the CGI, the sets, the costumes, the props, a colossal amount of money being spent. And was the reward worth it? Ultimately, at the moment, I don't know, because as of writing this, I don't have the Netflix viewing data, or it hasn't been updated as of writing this for the time of the film's release. So, did people watch it? Who knows? Historically, I feel like Millie has been a proven draw for Netflix. She proved that with Enola Holmes. The majority of the audience, they were there for her. So I wouldn't be shocked to see her do that again. But, that's only one measure of success, right? The viewership. There's also critical and audience reception, and so far, it's about what I expected. As of writing this, it's not too bad. It has a 61% critics rating off 71 reviews, and it has a 75% audience score as well. And that's not too shabby. Not too shabby at all. Pretty much what you'd expect. As whilst I did very much enjoy the film and think it was good, there were still moments that had me shaking my head or holding back a scoff. The story tells the tale of Aladi, a young princess noblewoman. It's never really made all that clear. They call them lady and lord, but, it's never really revealed what their relationship to the land was, who's betrothed to the prince of a distant kingdom. I gotta say, massive red flag when a random royal family invites you, a lowly noble from some poverty-stricken frozen wasteland, to get married out of the blue with no obvious advantage to themselves. Immediately deeply sus. But her dad accepts because their land's strapped for cash, and strapped for food, and warmth, and anything really. It's looking pretty grim. And so off they go to Auria, or whatever it was called, where whilst Aladi quickly bonds with her betrothed over the shared dream of travelling the world, her stepmother starts to get a bad feeling. And her dad, her dad's acting very, very sus, and turns out stepmom is right. It's all a setup, and they're going to sacrifice her to a creepy dragon down in the depths of a mountain. And so here, in the midpoint, Aladi goes from scared girl to cunning survivor, using her intelligence and wit to survive the dragon, and learn about the secrets of the caves, reading messages from sacrifices from long ago. And thus she's able to survive just long enough for her father to turn up with some goons, and they all die rather horribly, bad luck. But hey, at least they left a rope behind for her to climb, and the dragon doesn't take this all that well, and rather unforgivably to me, sets the poor little horsies on fire. No. From this point on, hated the dragon. Unforgivable to murder a horse in a fantasy film. This is just one of the laws of cinema. Unforgivable. No redemption now. Anyway, to calm the dragon queen, the human queen chucks Aladi's sister Floria down into the caves as well. The dragon waits for Aladi to come, they do battle, Aladi outplays her, she maims and brutalizes the dragon, before revealing to the dragon that while she'd been killing 3 girls every generation, seemingly royal girls, as payment for the murder of her 3 daughters and the end of her species, turns out she'd been played for a fool, and that this dragon is truly an idiot and had never been able to figure out that these people are literally mingling a tiny bit of blood onto random girls and tossing them in. Like an ancient mythical talking beast. She never figured this out. Idiot. She deserves to die for this one. Finish her off. Anyway, as I said, they battle, the dragon loses, Aladi does the reveal, and then she heals her with glowworms, because that is a thing that's established earlier in the film. And then they head down to the castle together to massacre everybody in what can only be described as a fantasy girl boss moment. Legit. How else do you phrase something like this? And then her and her stepmom and her sister, they go off to rule the kingdom, with the dragon coming along too. So I'm just gonna ignore that the dragon killed her dad. Well, you know what, fair enough. After all, he knew about it and he let her get sacrificed originally. Not exactly the most sympathetic character in the world, and kind of deserved what he got, to be honest. And also, I gotta say, going into the film, I did not expect it to be this dark and brutal. I thought, oh yeah, it's gonna be a princess fantasy battle adventure, maybe a few horror elements, some jump scares, but Jesus, all the burns, the corpses, the melting people, the deaths, the screams, the crushed bodies, the blood splatters. Woo! I did not expect any of that, tell you what. And so, yeah, that's the story. And I'll be honest with you, for the most part, this is probably the weaker element of the film. Like, the story is largely threadbare. We meet them in the homeland, but we never really get much more than that other than, it's cold here, and our people are dying. They leave, they spend hardly any time at the New Kingdom before she gets chucked down the hole. Although, I'll admit, the very little we did get in this section was impressive. They built tension, everybody piecing together that something was going very wrong here. And then, after that, we hardly ever see the human antagonists until they get turned into charcoal alongside the rest of the kingdom. And so, aside from Elodie, and to a small extent the dragon, we never get much from most of the characters, because they're never really given much time to develop or show us anything. And so all in all, you just gotta admit, story's threadbare. And so, yeah, I don't really think it's the mark of a very well-written story overall. But that being said, the narrative did get one thing right, and that's the character of Elodie, and her rise from frightened victim, to survivor, to warrior, to absolute Giga Chadess. They did that very well. And I think that was the most important thing, because isn't that always the case with these sorts of films, really? In classical action films made for a male demographic, you're going to see your main action man type hero get the most screen time, the most story, the most development. When you go to see a film starring The Rock, you're going to see a whole lot of story that revolves around The Rock. And also just a whole lot of The Rock beating on villains. Like, that's what the draw is. So this is pretty much just the same concept, but for a female-dominated demographic. A story where the woman's the hero, the woman's the focus. She's the warrior, the savior, fighting the battles, doing the stunts. It's just a fantasy action film. That's what this movie is, and I think it does it really well. Because as an individual, Elodie undergoes so much development, so much growth from her time in the caves. She's forced to contend with a dragon, a monster that wants to kill her, but also one that wants to make her suffer. And whilst I think the early section of this does drag on a little bit as she hides a lot, ultimately, this is the section of the film that well and truly slaps the hardest. It's just well made, well scripted, well blocked out. There's really interesting stunts and ideas, great directing, great music. Everything's firing on all cylinders in this midsection. It has you on the edge of your seat. It makes you feel uneasy. And it gives you that adrenaline rush of seeing Elodie continue to escape, slowly getting more and more adept until she gets to the point that she's capable of using the knowledge she's gained to defeat the dragon, to make the dragon listen. But that being said though, the story well and truly goes on turbo speed once she gets out of the caves. It just brushes by a lot of the other elements, especially the showdown with the royals. It lasts of all 30 seconds before the dragon swoops in and kills them all. Like, what? I wanted a bit more justice here. Because ultimately, whilst the royal family is the villain for the dragon, it's also not really fair to keep killing that family over and over and over. Is it? It's been hundreds of years at this point. So the queen, she's not the dragon's villain. She's Elodie's villain, because this is the family that did this to her, that sacrificed her to the monster. And yet she just gives her a tough one-liner and then watches her burn. Not exactly hugely satisfying to me. I think it would have been much more epic if they had some sort of tussle at the sacrifice zone, and maybe the queen gets knocked in and the prince too, screw that guy. And the king, kill them all, toss them all out. And then they fall, they get up, it's all dark, and then you see the dragon's face behind them, they turn, cuts back to Elodie, you hear them screaming, bones crunching, fire burning, melting. Yes, that's justice. That's how I would have had it play out. But yeah, like I said, the character of Elodie and the really well done action carries this film hard. Also, like, the score was good, nice and spooky at times. Those were the best elements, but the rest were hit or miss. I think the visual effects, they did look great, really exciting sometimes. And then other times they looked cheap and you could tell the film was running on a budget. I think when they're in the darker scenes they do get away with it more, but when it's all bright, it does not look as good. And sometimes the fire or the burn scars, they just also looked meh. And on top of that, the acting at times was like, what? Not Millie Bobby Brown. She was good. Like I said, her character and her performance carry this film hard. Without her, I genuinely think the film would have got way worse reviews. Her charisma and her skill is hiding a lot of the flaws in the story and whatnot, and it lets you look past some of the goofier effects. But I feel like with the rest of the performances, they either had hardly any scenes and thus didn't have enough time to do anything of note, to make much of an impact at all, or it felt like they were just phoning it in. And maybe they weren't, but that's how it felt to me watching. I was sitting there thinking, I feel like Robin Wright can do better than this, can't she? I feel like Angela Bassett can be better than this. What's up with this weird accent she's doing? Is she trying to be British? It's not working. Be American instead. I don't care. Do anything. Just not this. It was just kind of sad to see. And so, yeah, in the end, it's clear that this was a rather cheaply made movie. It mostly exists as a vehicle for Millie Bobby Brown to continue to pad out her resume, to get some producer credit, and to try to show off how much of a draw she really is. After all, she's pretty much the only character who counts, the only actress who counts in this. So if this random ass film draws a big audience, it's because of her for the most part, I'd suspect. And thus, she can continue to ask for more money. And it's a win-win, because if it does well, it's cheap content to feature Netflix's big star that they love to keep working with and trotting around. Pops a rating. But for what it was, I had a lot of fun with it. It was a solid B movie, and I think I'd watch it again. And so yeah, with all that being said, these have just been my opinions, and now I'd like to hear yours. What did you think of the film if you've seen it? Did you like it, hate it? Do you agree with my thoughts? Maybe not? I'm curious for your thoughts, so make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know.